How did Native Americans track animals in the snow? You would never guess the methods they used. In the silent winter forest, where every sound is muffled by the snow, a silent chase unfolded, more like reading a secret letter. The indigenous peoples of North America did not just survive in these conditions. They turned snow into their greatest ally. They read it like an open book, seeing what to us is just a white blanket. For them, snow was not an obstacle, but a canvas on which nature left its most secret messages. The ability to decipher these signs was the key to survival, an art honed by millennia of observation and patience. It was a science where the eyes were the tools, and the entire winter world was the laboratory. Watch the video to the end, and you will learn how trackers could determine not only the direction of movement, but also the intentions of an invisible target from a single footprint in the snow, and why the purest snow could tell more than the clearest footprint. I will reveal the most closely guarded secret of trackers, which is their attitude towards snow. For the indigenous people, snow was not just frozen water, but a living, breathing substance with its own character. They understood that each snowfall is unique and creates completely new conditions for reading the world. The first thing a future tracker learned was to distinguish between different types of snow by touch and sight. Fluffy, dry snow that crunches underfoot preserves tracks differently than wet, heavy spring snow. This knowledge was the basis for all further analysis. They paid attention to the structure of the snow cover, which consisted of several layers. Old compacted snow under freshly fallen powder could create misleading prints. An experienced eye always took this multi-layered nature into account in order to correctly interpret the depth and shape of a track. Wind was another important factor that constantly changed the snowy landscape. It could either hide tracks by covering them with fresh snow or expose them by blowing away the top layer. The tracker always moved with the direction and strength of the wind in mind. The sun also played a role, changing the texture of the snow throughout the day. A morning track left on a frosty crust looked completely different in the afternoon when the sun began to melt the edges. This transformation provided a key to determining the time. The depth to which the footprint sank was no less informative than its shape. It indicated the weight and speed of movement, as well as the condition of the snow cover in a particular place. The tracker compared the depth of the footprints in different areas to get the full picture. Indigenous peoples perceived snow as a chronicle of events, where each change was a new entry. A cap of snow fallen from a branch, a small landslide on a slope. These were all signs that could not be ignored. They were part of the overall story. They understood that snow not only reveals but also conceals. Sometimes the absence of tracks in an expected place was more important information than their presence. It could indicate the use of cunning routes, such as frozen streams. Therefore, for them, tracking was not a mechanical process, but a dialogue with nature. They did not just look for footprints, but tried to understand the logic of the winter world. This was their main secret. I'm very interested to hear your point of view. What do you think about such a spiritual approach to what seems to be a practical skill? Write about it in the comments. Are you ready to learn the truth about how a simple footprint in the snow turned into a detailed report? For a tracker, each footprint was a word in a sentence, and he had to know this alphabet perfectly. The shape of the footprint was the first and most obvious element for analysis. Even minor details, such as the clarity of the outline, could reveal a lot. Sharp, well-defined edges indicated that the track had been left very recently. Blurred and smudged contours suggested that a considerable amount of time had passed. The direction of movement was determined not only by the general trail, but also by the structure of a single footprint. When moving, snow is always thrown forward slightly in the direction of movement. An experienced eye could see this tiny snow roll and accurately determine the vector. The depth of the tracks was the next parameter that was carefully analyzed. The evenly pressed snow indicated a calm and measured pace. It was a sign of confident movement without haste. Sudden changes in the depth of the footprints, on the contrary, signaled a change in gait. Deeper footprints located further apart indicated acceleration. This could be caused by various reasons, which the tracker would investigate further. The distance between the footprints, or stride length, was also an important indicator. Short, frequent steps could indicate caution or movement over difficult terrain. Long, sweeping strides indicated rapid movement across open ground. Trackers also paid attention to how the limb was placed. A print that was deeper at the front indicated movement uphill. A print that was deeper at the heel indicated descent from a slope. By observing a chain of tracks, it was possible to understand the general condition of the target. A smooth, straight trail indicated purposeful movement toward a known point. A winding and disorderly line of tracks could indicate a search for food or confusion. For indigenous peoples, each such footprint was not just a hole in the snow, it was a snapshot of an action frozen in time. The ability to read these snapshots allowed them to predict the next actions of their target. All these elements, shape, depth, distance, were analyzed not separately, but as a whole. Only the big picture gave a complete understanding of what was happening. But what if I told you that the most important signs weren't footprints at all? What you never saw was how trackers read signs that had nothing to do with the ground. Tracking in the snow was the art of noticing not only what was underfoot, but everything that was happening around you. Disturbed snow on tree branches was one such important sign. Fresh snowfall covered the branches of fir and pine trees with lush white caps. If a tracker saw that snow had fallen from the lower branches, it was a sure sign that someone had recently passed by. This helped to find the trail, even if the footprints on the ground were barely visible. Pieces of bark or pine needles lying on the surface of clean snow also attracted attention. Their presence meant that someone had disturbed the tree trunk. This could have happened while searching for food or simply through careless movement. The trackers carefully examined the bushes and low-growing trees for broken twigs. A fresh break, not covered with frost, was a clear indication of a recent presence. The height of the broken branch allowed conclusions to be drawn about the size of the passerby. They also looked for any foreign objects in the snow that shouldn't be there. These could be pieces of fur stuck to a branch or a few drops of dark liquid on the white canvas. Each such sign was a clue that needed to be investigated. Feeding sites provided a wealth of information, even if no clear tracks remained. Snow dug up in search of berries, gnawed bark on young trees. All this pointed to a certain type of activity. The condition of these sites could be used to judge the time of day. Even sound played a role in this art. An experienced tracker knew how snow crunched differently at different times of the day and at different temperatures. He could determine the condition of the snow by the sound of his own footsteps and understand how far his own footsteps would be heard. Smells do not travel as well in the frosty air, but they could also provide clues. A sensitive nose could detect the smell of disturbed pine needles or dug up earth under the snow. This was further confirmation that the chosen path was correct. In this way, the tracker read not only the tracks, but also the entire surrounding landscape. For him, the forest was a three-dimensional space where signs could be found at any level. He gathered information from a variety of sources, creating a complete picture. This ability to see the unobvious was the main difference between a master and a novice. He did not just follow the trail, but read the whole world around him. This turned tracking into an intellectual task requiring maximum concentration. What if I showed you a time machine that works with snow? This was the tool used by indigenous trackers to determine the age of a track with remarkable accuracy. This skill was critical because following an old track meant wasting energy and time. First, they assessed the clarity of the edges of the print. Fresh tracks have sharp edges with clearly distinguishable fine details. Over time, wind and sun smoothed these edges, making them more rounded and blurred. The amount of fresh snow that had gotten inside the footprint was another reliable indicator. If it was snowing lightly, the tracker could, knowing the speed of the snowfall, calculate fairly accurately how long ago the track had been left. A completely clean footprint indicated that it had appeared after the snowfall had ended. The condition of the snow inside the footprint was also important. Snow compacts at the bottom of a footprint. Over time, under the influence of the sun and wind, a thin crust of ice, or crust, can form on this compacted surface. Trackers always kept in mind the weather of the past few days. They remembered when the last snowfall was, when the sun was shining, and when the wind was strong. By comparing the condition of the track with this meteorological data, they obtained an accurate timestamp. Hoarfrost was another subtle tool for dating. On a frosty, clear night, hoarfrost crystals cover all surfaces, including old tracks. If hoarfrost was present on the bottom and sides of the footprint, it meant that it had been left at least before nightfall. Sunlight affected the south and north-facing slopes of the footprint differently. The southern sunny slope melted faster, its structure changed, and it became grainy. The northern slope, which was in the shade, retained its original structure much longer. Observing these microclimatic changes within a single track allowed conclusions to be drawn about how long it had been exposed to the sun. It was a very subtle but accurate method. It required a deep understanding of the sun's movement across the sky. Sometimes a simple practical technique was used to verify the age of a track. The tracker made his own footprint nearby and compared it with the one being studied. The difference in clarity, color, and structure of the snow clearly showed the time interval. It was a complex analytical process, similar to the work of a forensic scientist. The tracker collected a lot of circumstantial evidence to make the only correct conclusion. The entire future success depended on this conclusion. But how could they determine not only the time from the tracks, but also what was happening at that moment? In the next chapter, you will learn how trackers reconstructed entire scenes from the past. A chain of tracks in the snow is not just a line, but a story written by nature itself. Native trackers knew how to read this story, reconstructing past events in incredible detail. They saw not individual prints, but entire scenes and patterns of behavior. A straight and purposeful line of tracks following the most optimal route indicated migration or movement toward a known destination. The movement was confident, without pauses or deviations. This was the easiest scenario to read. If the trail began to meander, often changing direction, it indicated a search for food. The tracks approached bushes, the bases of trees, sometimes splitting and converging again. The tracker understood that the target was busy with their daily activities and less vigilant. A sudden change in the nature of the tracks was always a warning sign. For example, a calm gait was suddenly replaced by long leaps. This meant that the target was frightened by something and had fled. In such cases, the tracker began to carefully examine the surroundings, looking for the cause of the panic. Often, traces of a predator were found nearby. This completely changed the tactics of pursuit. Places where the prints converged in one spot, forming a trampled area, indicated a resting or sleeping place. The condition of the snow in this spot could be used to determine how long the target had been there. A fresh, untouched resting place was a good sign. Sometimes the tracks could reveal the interaction of several individuals. The tracker could distinguish between tracks of different sizes, walking side by side. Their relative positions could be used to judge the social relationships and hierarchy within the group. The snow also preserved traces of struggle or hunting. These could be drag marks, dug-up snow, or bloodstains. For the tracker, this was the climax of the drama, which he reconstructed from the clues left behind. Even how the target overcame obstacles was informative. Did they jump over a fallen tree or go around it? This spoke to their physical condition and level of caution. By understanding behavior, the tracker could begin to predict it. If he saw that the trail led to a stream, he could assume that the target would go to drink and cut across. This turned the pursuit from a chase into a strategic game. What if I told you that the best trackers used what hides tracks to find them? For them, snow cover was not just a surface, but a complex three-dimensional map full of clues. They used the terrain and features of the snow to optimize their route. When following a trail, a tracker did not always follow it exactly. He often chose a parallel course, walking along the crest of a hill or ridge. This gave him a better view and allowed him to see the trail from a greater distance. They knew very well how the wind redistributes snow on the terrain. On the windward side of the hills, the snow is blown away, and the cover there is thinner and the tracks are clearer. In the hollows and on the leeward side, on the contrary, deep snow drifts form where tracks can be completely hidden. Using this knowledge, a tracker could predict where a trail would become unreadable and look for detours in advance. He looked for places where the wind could not cover the trail. This saved a lot of time and effort. The sun was also their tool. On a bright sunny day, tracks are best seen when the sun is low on the horizon, in the morning or evening. The long shadows cast by the edges of the prints make them contrasting and clearly visible. At noon, when the sun is high, the shadows are short, and the tracks can blend in with the surrounding surface. At this time, trackers relied more on other signs. They knew how to adapt their vision to different lighting conditions. Frozen streams and rivers were the real highways of the winter forest. The ice, covered with a thin layer of snow, allowed you to move quickly and leave almost no traces. Trackers always checked such places if they lost the trail in the forest. They also paid attention to so-called heat islands in the forest. At the foot of large trees or near large rocks, the snow often melts. These places could preserve tracks when they had already been covered in open spaces. Understanding how different types of terrain affect snow cover was key to success. Snow lies differently in a dense spruce forest than in an open clearing. The tracker knew the characteristics of each of these biotopes. In the next chapter, we will learn how the trackers themselves move through this snowy world, remaining invisible and inaudible. Successful tracking required not only the ability to read tracks, but also the ability to move without leaving your own. The tracker had to become part of the winter landscape, a shadow gliding across the snow. Special footwear, snowshoes, played a key role in this. The design of snowshoes varied from tribe to tribe and depended on the type of snow. For deep, loose snow on the plains, they used wide, almost round snowshoes, similar to a bear's paw. They distributed weight perfectly and prevented sinking. In wooded areas, where maneuverability was required, longer and narrower snowshoes with curved toes were used. They made it easy to move between trees and bushes. Each type was perfectly adapted to its environment. The tracker's clothing was also thought out to the smallest detail. It was sewn from soft, treated leather that did not make rustling sounds when moving. Unlike modern synthetic fabrics, such clothing was virtually silent. The color of the clothing was chosen to match the surrounding landscape. In winter, they wore white or light-colored camouflage capes. These allowed them to blend in with the snow and become invisible in open spaces. The technique of walking on snow was a special art. They moved slowly and smoothly, shifting their weight from one foot to the other without sudden movements. Their steps were sliding so as not to disturb the integrity of the snow cover. The trackers tried to step into existing depressions or shadows. They avoided stepping on dry branches hidden under the snow, which could give them away with a loud crack. Every step was deliberate and cautious. As they moved, they constantly monitored the wind. It was important to move so that the wind blew from their target toward them, carrying their scent away. This was the golden rule of any hunter. They used natural cover for movement and observation. They moved along the edge of the forest, behind boulders and undulations in the terrain. Entering open space was a risky move that was only taken when necessary. All these skills combined allowed the tracker to get as close to the target as possible while remaining undetected. He didn't just walk on the snow, he blended into the winter world, becoming an integral part of it. Tracking did not always end at sunset. For an experienced tracker, the night, especially a moonlit night, opened up new possibilities. Snow looked completely different in the moonlight, and one had to know how to use this to one's advantage. In the dim light of the moon or stars, the human eye has a harder time distinguishing colors, but it perceives contrast much better. Traces in the snow, thanks to the shadows they cast, became even more noticeable than during the day. Each indentation cast a long, dark shadow. The tracker moved so that the moon was to the side of the trail. This created the most contrasting picture. If the moon shone on his back or face, the shadows became short, and the tracks were harder to see. At night, other senses were heightened, especially hearing. In the frosty air, sounds travel long distances. The tracker could hear a branch crack or snow crunch hundreds of meters away. He himself moved with double caution, as any sound he made could also be heard from afar. The silence of the night did not forgive mistakes. Movements became even slower and more measured. In addition to sight and hearing, trackers used their sense of snow. Walking along the trail, they felt the slightest changes in the density of the snow cover with their feet. This allowed them to stay on the trail, even when it was difficult to see. Knowledge of the terrain at night became even more important. The tracker had to remember the location of ravines, streams, and windbreaks blindly. He moved not so much by what he saw as by the mental map stored in his memory. The night sky also served as a guide. The position of the stars and the moon helped them stay on course on moonless or cloudy nights. These were their natural compass and clock. Night tracking was a test of supreme skill. It required not only perfect mastery of all skills, but also a special psychological attitude. One had to feel as confident in the night forest as during the day. It was a complete fusion with nature, when a person ceased to be just an observer and became part of the night world. He used darkness as his ally. This gave him a huge advantage. Although the image of the lone tracker is firmly entrenched in culture, tracking was often a collective activity. A group of hunters working in unison could accomplish tasks that were impossible for one person alone. It was well-rehearsed teamwork. When fresh tracks were discovered, the group could split up. One or two of the most experienced trackers would follow the trail directly. The rest would move in parallel courses on either side, within sight of each other. This tactic, called flanking, had several advantages. The observers on the sides could see if the target tried to turn aside. They also scanned the terrain ahead, preventing a possible ambush. If the trail was lost, for example, on rocky terrain or in a snowdrift, the group did not panic. They stopped, and each member began to methodically comb the area in a fan pattern from the point of loss. This greatly accelerated the search for the continuation of the trail. A complex system of silent signals was used for long-distance communication. Hand gestures, body position, or even the tilt of the head could convey important information. For example, a raised hand could mean stop, and a circular motion could mean surround. These signals were universal and understandable to every member of the group. They allowed them to coordinate their actions over long distances without making a sound. This was the basis for successful collective hunting. As they approached their target, their tactics changed. The group began to converge, forming a semicircle. The task was to direct the target in the right direction, toward a cliff, deep snow, or other hunters waiting in ambush. The distribution of roles in the group was clear and based on experience. The most observant went on the flanks. The most enduring and experienced followed the trail. Young hunters usually brought up the rear, learning and performing auxiliary functions. Such cooperation required complete trust between group members. Everyone had to be sure that their comrades would fulfill their tasks. Any mistake by one person could jeopardize the success of the entire operation. Collective tracking was a demonstration not only of hunting skills, but also of social organization. It showed how individual skills, united by a common goal, create a force greater than the sum of its parts. The art of tracking was not an innate gift, but the result of long and painstaking training. Knowledge was passed down from generation to generation, from older to younger, through hands-on practice. This process began in early childhood. The child did not sit at a desk studying theory. He simply followed his father or grandfather into the forest. At first, he was just an observer, absorbing the atmosphere, sounds, and smells of the winter world. The mentor constantly drew the student's attention to details that he himself would not have noticed. He might silently point to a broken branch or a barely noticeable depression in the snow. This is how the habit of observation was formed. The training was structured in the form of questions rather than ready-made answers. Seeing a trail, the elder would ask, "What do you see here? Where did it go? Why do you think it turned here?" This forced the student to think and analyze independently. Gradually, the task became more complex. At first, the young tracker was trusted to follow a simple and clear trail. Then he was asked to untangle a more complex trail that meandered or disappeared. Mistakes were an inevitable part of the training and were treated calmly. If the student lost the trail, the mentor did not scold him, but helped him go back and find the place where the mistake was made. Analyzing failures was an essential part of the training. Great attention was paid to developing patience. The student was taught to sit motionless for hours, observing one area of the forest. This cultivated endurance and the ability to concentrate. Along with tracking practice, they studied animal habits and behaviors. A young hunter had to know where to look for a particular target at different times of the day, what it ate, and how it reacted to danger. This knowledge was just as important as the ability to read tracks. By the time the apprentice became an adult, all this knowledge had become second nature to him. He no longer thought about what a particular sign meant, but perceived the information intuitively. The forest and snow became a familiar and understandable world for him. This learning process ensured the continuity of traditions. It guaranteed that the invaluable experience accumulated by ancestors would not be lost. It is thanks to this that the art of tracking reached such heights. We can see that tracking in the snow was not just a skill for the indigenous peoples of North America, but a whole science and philosophy. It was a deep understanding of the laws of nature, the ability to see connections where the uninitiated saw only chaos. Snow was transformed from a lifeless blanket into a living chronicle, accessible to those who knew its language. This art required not only keen eyesight, but also an analytical mind, a phenomenal memory, patience, and a deep respect for the world around them. Each trip to the winter forest was not just a hunt, but a dialogue with nature, an intellectual duel where the main prize was survival. Their legacy reminds us how much we can learn if we look at the world more closely. What other aspects of the life or skills of the indigenous peoples of America would you like to see in future videos? Suggest your topics in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on new research into the wisdom of ancient cultures.